And now it's time to introduce our speaker. And it's really difficult for me to talk about Brian because I want to cry. I do because, I don't know if you all know this, but Brian has a secret power. He's a good finder, and he's a gift finder. And he finds the best in people, and he brings it out. And that's why we have such a vibrant community, is because he allows us all to do our thing, which is really, really unique. So without further ado, our leader, Reverend Brian Walker.
That's right. No, take it. Here, why don't you take it? Yeah, there you go. Good morning. Good morning. So breathe with me. Oh man, I don't know about you, but that feels better. So some time ago, we created a stewardship committee within the church. And so we are stewards of all of the resources that we have, which are amazing, because they are you. And what a blessing each and every person is. So I have been given talks, and the stewardship has been in action. Jean is currently teaching a course on the soul of money. We've had some personal testimonials from up here. And so the stewardship committee has been working. And so in that vein, I want to share one of the hallmarks, one of the pillars of stewardship, and that's generosity. So when we talk about somebody being generous, what we mean is that they're willing to give more than what is necessary or required. So they give more. And while we usually associate that with money, there are many other gifts. Our time, our presence, our love, our talent, our energy. All of those things are things that we have to offer from our own personal being. So all of the wisdom traditions emphasize that we are naturally generous. And that's because we are an expression of the One. All of the wisdom traditions, all the mystical traditions, that is the fundamental teaching, is that they're only one. And we're an expression of that. And we have all those power and resources. Whether it's Christian, whether it's Islamic, whether it's Buddhist, whether it's Hindu, Jewish, all the religions teach us that we are generous. And that is something that is important for us to do. To practice that generosity and to serve. Because it's the essence of who we are. And it is the reason that we're here having this human experience, is to share our gifts with each other. And so it used to be that psychology said that they were very skeptical of this idea that human beings are naturally altruistic. The view was that we did it either to show off or to get something, or as a kind of a bargaining chip, so that we could get something from somebody else. So that's why we did things for other people. But in the last couple of decades, as positive psychology has come to the fore, and all of this different kind of research has come out about generosity and a lot of other characteristics, the research shows that human generosity results in increased happiness, improved mental health, stronger relationships, and a sense of belonging. So when we use this natural capacity that we have, it does so many good things for us. But you might be asking or thinking, but Pastor, it doesn't always feel that way when I go to give. And so sometimes it feels more like a hardship than an opportunity. And we might ask the question, well, why is that? For one reason, and this is a very significant reason, and that is that we live in a consumer culture. And so what does that mean? It means that many of us, and probably all of us to one degree or another, identify with what we have, what we consume, and that is how we think about ourselves and how we define our egos. Do I have the right stuff? Am I keeping up with my neighbor? And that can be very subtle because we're in this ocean and we really don't realize it. But everywhere we go, there's this advertising that tells us, you need this to be okay. And so another impact that has is it distracts us from our inner work. On the path to spiritual growth and transformation, we acknowledge that we need to do some inner work, to do our spiritual practice. But when we are constantly distracted by what is going on out there and how we define ourselves, whether it's, watching sports on TV or going shopping or whatever it is, that distracts us from being on the path and following our natural kind of path to follow. Another quality or another characteristic is that as we are so distracted by these outside things that we get afraid and we get anxious because we see what's happening in the outer world, and whether it's fear of our economic situation or some of what's going on in politics in the world, that we become very anxious and we become fearful. And that's another way that gets us away from our true nature and who we truly are and blocks us from this natural expression of generosity. Does this ever end? Ethical and moral dilemmas. When we are focused so much on this consumer kind of culture and what's going on out there, we run into ethical dilemmas. I know a cartoon where there's some parents who are meeting with a teacher about having this parent-teacher conference, and the teacher is telling them something, and the caption reads, "But he's cheating at a 6th grade level." So there's this idea that, we need to get ahead. And so we have these ethical and moral dilemmas. Another challenge, and this is an important one, is the loss of community and connection. Because as we get more wrapped up in who we are, how we define ourselves, how we look, do we have status, do we have the right stuff, it separates us from other people because we're making these comparisons. Am I okay? You're almost okay. There's this constant game going on, and we can't fully celebrate who we are and become a part of this natural flow of giving and receiving. However, as we become aware of these things, we can cultivate this quality of generosity. And so basically what we need to do is to commit to being aware of how we get distracted and how we are separated from other people by all of these things that we do. So I want to tell you a story. This is a story from the Gospels. And it's about a time when Jesus was in the temple at Jerusalem. And people were making offerings to the temple treasury, which was something that was routinely done and required by Jewish law. And it was an opportunity for some of the people of wealth and influence in the community to bring their money bags forth and to listen to all of their coins clank as they dropped it in to the treasury containers. And so there was a widow there who was barely making it. She had 2 small coins, which would have been totally insignificant compared to what some of the other people were giving. But to her, they were so important because they were an essential part of her livelihood from day to day. And so she meekly took up the coins, and they dropped and made a little clink in the container there. And Jesus, who had been observing everything, turned to his disciples and said, "She who gives has given more than all of those who have contributed, because they give from their wealth, and she gives from her heart." More than all the others is what Jesus said. She gives more than all the others. And so we're reminded that true generosity springs from the heart. It's not in the quantity, it's the quality. And that we all have that capacity because we have that ability to give whatever we choose from the heart. So I want to tell you another story. This one is from the book The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist, which is the book that we're currently using for the class. So Lynn Twist is a global activist. She's an author, a spiritual teacher, an ecology pioneer. And early on in her life, she became committed to the Hunger Project, which is something I'm sure many of you heard of. It goes back, 50 years ago. And there was a group of people who were committed to ending hunger on this planet, and they felt that they could do that. And so she joined that group and was really committed to achieving this goal of ending hunger on the planet. And she was a fundraiser. And so she tells about a particular day when she was new to this, and she had been called in one of her most important visits to visit this corporate executive, and that she had been told that they had a very generous gift for them. Now, what she learned before she went there was that this corporation, which was a big name corporation, very wealthy, but had been in a lot of ethical trouble recently. And there were those who thought that their newfound generosity was kind of motivated by less than questionable kind of motivation. So anyway, so Lynn went there. She was in Chicago, and she came to this huge building, and she going up in these flights of floors on the elevator and down these halls. And she said as she got closer and closer to the office and past the doors, she was getting more and more nervous, and she started to perspire. So anyway, so she goes in and she meets this corporate executive and she makes her pitch and she kind of senses that he's not totally there. But at the end of about 15 minutes, he pushes an envelope to her and she takes it and leaves, feeling a little bit unsettled. So she has another commitment for that day. She's flying to New York, to Harlem. And this is at a church that's mostly African American. And so she goes there. It had been raining hard. She was late. This was in the basement, and the congregation had very generously, those who chose, waited for her for almost an hour. And she came in, and she laid forth before them what she was there for and what she stood for. And there was a woman in the back, a large black woman. Her name was Gertrude. And she said, I like what I'm hearing, and I believe in this, and I'm going to give. And she started a real kind of effect where, people were throwing their money in it, and it was a really spontaneous kind of giving that really felt to Lynn like this is where I want to be. So the next day, she did something that is pretty unheard of in circles where you're asking for money. She sent the $50,000 check back because she didn't feel right about accepting it. That it wasn't something that was energetically going to be in alignment with what they were doing and how the sense of giving and generosity feel for her. And that was a personal kind of feeling that she had. Now the story has an interesting ending in that many years later, the Hunger Project, actually it was sent to Lynn herself, but they got a check from this corporate executive for many times the amount of the $50,000. And it was a personal check from him, because he'd retired, and he was acknowledging that at that time, he didn't feel like this was in the spirit of really giving and generosity that he wanted to be a part of. And as part of his change after he retired, he wanted to personally give to the project that she asked for. So you can see a parallel between what happened with Lynn Twist and the money that she was given, and the money that was given in the temple at the Jerusalem. That there is a spirit that we can give that makes all the difference in the world. So Lynn Twist makes a statement that I found really quite interesting. She says, generosity and collaboration are the source of true prosperity. Generosity and collaboration. And I think about us as a community and how we collaborate and how everybody is invited to offer your gift in whatever way that feels right for you, and how that makes us so prosperous. Breathe with me.
That was so powerful what you just said there, Brian. Oh my God.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thanks, buddy. He's not a plant, okay? So I want to tell you about another tradition. This is the Buddhist tradition, where they have identified beings that are called bodhisattvas. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the term. but it describes beings who commit themselves to the work for benefit of all sentient beings. And that includes the promise to obtain Buddhahood, Christ consciousness, as we might language it, in order to help others, rather than entering nirvana immediately for their own sake. So they are totally giving of themselves, saying that we're all one and that we are going to enter nirvana, as the Buddhists describe it, together. And I'm willing to give my all for that. And so you can see, I think, from these stories and this idea about that you are what you give. You are what you give. And it is a reflection of your consciousness and who you are as an expression in this human expression. And so the corporate executive who kind of pushed the check over, he realized later in his life that's not who he wanted to be. He wanted to give freely. And so he did get to that place. And he was in a place of a changed consciousness. And so it's a way that we can reflect on how we are and how we give. So it's important that when we feel called to give something, or the circumstances present itself, not to give reluctantly. Not to give reluctantly. To check in with yourself and to find out what it is that Spirit really calls you to do. Because when you give from that place of, not quite sure, there's energy attached to that. And it doesn't really align with what you're feeling in your heart and what you want the recipient to get. And that is something that is energetically in alignment with what they're doing and something that you believe in totally. So I invite you to consider that and to know that, somebody said, if you want to know where your heart is, look in your checkbook. So that's a real quick kind of tallying you can do to see, or maybe it's your credit card report or whatever. But where does my money go? What do I spend my money on? So that's a place that you can take a look at and be very conscious of what that means for you. So again, in the Buddhist tradition, when somebody came to the Buddha and said that they wanted to follow in his path, the first thing that the Buddha taught them was about dana, which is the Buddhist term for generosity. Now, we in the West, we want to go straight for the top. We want those transcendental experiences. And we realize, I may have to sit on the cushion for a while, but I'm willing to pay that price. But in the Buddhist tradition, it's recognized that cultivating that generosity, that sense of morality, is actually what is the kind of precursor for, and it is the foundation for letting go. Letting go is so important, of letting go of, so I want to let go of that. And it's the foundation for reaching those higher states of consciousness. So, as I mentioned before, you can cultivate generosity if you'd like to. And I'm inviting you to and suggesting that you do a little inventory, because it is a foundational kind of practice and it will give you feedback. You are what you give. And again, ask yourself, where does that come from in my heart? Is this what I'm really aligned with? So, the first thing is, create an intention. With everything that you want to do and that you really want to get done, create an intention. Create an intention that says, yes, this matters to me and I am going to invest some energy in it. Whatever that means for you. Make affirmations, put Post-its up, journal, whatever it is. But I am, this is important to me. It's significant and I'm going to do it. Okay? The next thing is, you can start small. So what does that mean? Just being kind is generous. Smile to somebody. To give somebody a kind word, to give somebody a support. These are small things that you can do without much cost, and yet you can get a lot of benefit from. Next thing is practice gratitude. Gratitude and generosity are very closely linked. That when we realize how much we have already and how blessed we are for having it, it really sets into motion this whole quality of generosity. That is a natural capacity that we have. Shift your consciousness from scarcity, from fear, to abundance. Realize that it is an abundant universe. That we have all that we need and more. And engage in community. Engage in this community. Engage in other communities. Because it connects you to that possibility where you're going to have these opportunities to volunteer, to be part of a group that makes connections, and that's a natural for generosity. Breathe with me. So we are going to be doing something important here after our Sunday celebration today. And I think most of you know there's a possibility that of the merger between Uni 5 Cities, Uni San Luis Obispo. And we'll be, of course, talking more about that later. But my invitation to you, and so one of the characteristics of that, or one of the qualities of the merger, is that the two communities would be joining resources, and Uni San Luis Obispo, having sold their building not too long ago, there's a big pool of resource there as a promissory note. That's a lot of money. And so it's easy to go, we won the lottery. Come on, we got the jackpot. That is not the way that I suggest that you see this, but rather to see it through the lens of generosity. That we as a community have so much. We have so much. So much that it's overflowing. So to ask yourself this question, do we have so much that we could overflow and spread some of that to San Luis Obispo? And check in with your heart with that. And whatever answer you get, that's the answer that you contribute to our community decision. I'll just remind you of our mission as a spiritual community. And the first 6 words say, we are a heart-centered spiritual community. We are a heart-centered spiritual community that supports empowering personal growth and living the unlimited life of spirit. So friends, generosity is an essential part of your nature. And you can cultivate it. And I invite you to do that. If Marilyn was here, she would say, that's your homework. I love that about her. Practicing generosity is good for you, for the recipient, for the human family, for the planet, for the universe, because it sends forth vibrations that make a difference. You are what you give. So, I have a little affirmation here that I want us to just affirm. So I'm going to read it. As I share my gifts with the world, and friends, as I pointed out, that is what you're here to do, is to share your gifts. Not in a kind of way, but in a big, heartfelt kind of way. As I share my gifts with the world, I recognize that I am enriched beyond measure, because that is being in the flow of the universe. And when you give, the world gives back to you. All right. Together, as I share my gifts with the world, I recognize that I am enriched beyond measure. Okay, one more time with spirit. Together, as I share my gifts with the world, I recognize that I am enriched beyond measure. So I'll just leave you with this Hindu proverb that says, those who give have everything, and those who withhold have nothing.